Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today, for the last viewer-contributed video of this week, we have Interstellar Kraken, who is sailing in his Shokaku, and he's teamed up with two Gasconias, a Bismarck, a Colorado, an Algerie, and a Le Terrible, a very, very fast French premium destroyer. The enemy team has a Shokaku as well. 3 battleships, a Richelieu, which is a very, very dangerous ship, a Miyoko, and 2 destroyers. So we're playing Golden Channel. This better be good. You'd expect the destroyers to rush the cap, the battleships to hold the cap, and the carriers to do some spotting and generally help with dealing damage. Now, before we get in this game, actually let me pause it here for a second. And there's something I need to explain. And it's not Golden Channel related. Winning the game can happen in multiple ways. This seems to be very, very strange to some people. But winning the game can happen in multiple ways. You can win by points. If your team reaches 1,000 points, you win. You gain points by, holding the capture circle. 4 points every 3 seconds. So holding the capture circle is generally a good thing because it increases your points. You also gain points by destroying enemy ships. I mean, it says all here, but still people don't seem to quite realize how this works. You get 60 points for killing a destroyer, 70 for a cruiser, 80 for a battleship, and 90 for a carrier. So if none of the 2 teams reaches 1,000 points by the end of the game, when the timer runs out, whichever team has the most points wins. If you kill all ships of the enemy team, your team gains 1,000 points and wins. We will see why this becomes important. Anyway, let's proceed with the battle. So, Golden Channel. yeah, this is gonna be special. The carrier, he'll send out his fighter planes in the center and all the other planes as well, by the looks of it. Yeah, so he doesn't go over the flanks, which makes sense because the destroyers are not going to come around the flanks early. They're going to head straight for the capture circle. So the enemy carrier does the same thing. And he tries to bait the fighters, bring him back over his carrier to kill them, and then see if he can spot one of the destroyers. And just sending them straight in. There's the Yukikaze. So he drops some bombs on the Yukikaze. And the Yukikaze, just having come under air attack, of course, keeps sailing in a straight line at the same speed. Which, as you might imagine, is rather unhealthy, because the Yukikaze is now very dead. So that's one thing. There's another thing that has just happened. As you might see, Kraken here doesn't have his full hit points anymore. How could that be? Well, we have a special carrier. The carrier decided that he needs to go sniping. Meanwhile, Kraken's team here makes very little effort to get into the cap. The only ship that got into the cap is the Le Terrible because he was quick. So he now actually has to maneuver to dodge airdrop torpedoes. The Terrible says, okay, if nobody wants to go in the cap, I'm not staying in the cap either. And decides to go and inspect that island there to the east. Meanwhile, the Gneisenau and the Bismarck are sailing straight for the caps. There come some Terrible torps probably, but I don't think they have range. Maybe they do? No, they don't. And Kraken's, he's in a target-rich environment. 1 destroyer is down, that's a good start. There's a Kagero here somewhere, and he just got spotted. Okay. Meanwhile, the enemy carrier is still trying to drop him. And the battleships are extremely allergic to the cap, so they've decided that they don't want to be anywhere near this thing. But he's got a lot of battleships here. He starts with the Richelieu, but then realizes the Kagero is actually catching up to that Bismarck over there. So he decides to give him some air support. And because, I mean, even though the Bismarck doesn't seem to be wanting to get anywhere near the battle, he's still under threat by the Kagero. And he almost gets him. 1 more torp would have done the trick. But again, he actually has to stop looking at his planes and dodge torpedo attacks from the enemy Shokaku, which still hasn't realized that this is not a great idea. So he takes 1 torp, has to maneuver a bit. Meanwhile, the Algerie and the Le Terrible are really inspecting the east of the map here. And just making sure that there are no enemy ships over there. Spoilers! Spoiler alert, they're in the capture circle. They're not over there. The Bismarck, meanwhile, has doing the same thing in the west. The Gasconia hasn't moved at all. And the Colorado was briefly in the cap circle and has decided, nope, screw that, I'm not being in here. I'm getting shot at when I'm in here. I'm not going to be having with that. I'm going to leave. So the Colorado's sailing away. Meanwhile, Kraken is still under air attack, and he is hammering the Richelieu as much as he can, while pulling the fighters away and doing his level best to actually inflict some damage. So he almost killed two enemy ships. He's done some serious damage to the Richelieu by now. The Algerie has found his brave pants and is returning to the cap circle. Now that there are a lot of battleships in there, so you gotta be a bit careful. And he's deciding that the best way to do this is to give broadside to a Miyoko and a Richelieu. Meanwhile, the enemy carrier has been so busy trying to focus down Kraken that he hasn't realized that there's the Le Terrible right next to him. Who, well, you know, is a destroyer. He might have torpedoes. But the Le Terrible is taking his sweet time, so Kraken here is still very busy trying to sink that Richelieu. And the Bismarck has come all the way around. The Colorado seems to be trying to make his way around as well, because if the Colorado is one thing, then it is a fast battleship that you can use to run the flanks with. And the Gasconians have decided, nope, I'm staying right back here. I'm not doing anything. Kraken is reversing, just to try to give some distance, and decides to go for the Miyoko, probably thinking that his battleships can deal with that very wounded Richelieu, and frantically trying to get fighter cover in. It looks like, they finally sunk the Richelieu, and the Le Terrible is still sailing next to the carrier, who still hasn't realized that there's a destroyer right next to him, and has been trying to airdrop the Colorado. So finally he's dead. The Miyoko is retreating now. There are only 3 ships left. The problem is they're still holding the capture circle, and the Bismarck has lost a close quarters combat with the other Bismarck. So Kraken here goes after the Miyoko, because he's still in the capture circle, and his team isn't. The 2 Gasconians are still sitting exactly where they started the game. The Colorado is still trying to run around the flank, and the Le Terrible is now making his way back into the cap circle after having sunk the enemy carrier. Now the Gneisenau actually realizes that there are torpedoes in the water, because, you know, there's a destroyer. So, you know, he dodges them. Meanwhile, Kraken has had enough. He's put his carrier in forward, because if no one else does it, you gotta do it yourself. Because the destroyer is not feeling that he needs to cap. He's trying to torpedo the Gneisenau, which isn't gonna work, and then is sailing away on his merry way. There's still a Bismarck back there. Let me pause it again for a second here. Even if they cap now, and they can't cap because the Gneisenau is still in the capture circle. Even if they were to cap right now, it'll still get awfully close, provided they're not killing any more ships. It'll still get awfully close because they only have 1:30 left. So, and they are almost 100 points behind even though they've killed 5 enemy ships and the enemy team only has killed 2 ships. They have not actually attempted to get the capture circle. So, well, Kraken is heading for the capture circle because, well, that's what carriers are for. They're for capping. He circles some fighters over Gneisenau. I don't know if that was an accident or if he's trying to distract the Gneisenau's AA, such that the torpedo bombers are coming through. But here's his big caliber. There comes the second torpedo drop. Gneisenau is going forward, but he's not maneuverable enough. So that's a couple more good torpedo hits. That's a flood, and that should be a perma-flood and a perma-fire. And I think the Gneisenau is very, very dead. Now, the enemy team is still 60 points ahead. There's less than a minute to go. The Bismarck, well, what he could do now is run, because Kraken here in his Shokaku is actually capping. But it's a little too late. There's only 40 seconds left, which means he has to kill the Bismarck. Even after capping, he now has to brawl the Bismarck in a Shokaku. I am not making this up. So he sends everything he's got, and he is rushing the Bismarck in the Shokaku. Because the closer he gets, the faster his planes come back. Now the Bismarck, I don't know if he's realized this, but he sees carrier, and he goes shooting at the carrier. The Le Terrible is far away. Now it's 10 seconds left. The Bismarck is flooding. He's perma-flooding because he damage conked the 2 fires. The Bismarck is on extremely low health, but they still don't have enough points. If the Bismarck survives, no! The Bismarck dies and floods out, and his return salvo sinks Kraken, who has a solo cap in a carrier and has brawled a Bismarck to death, which means he received the first strike, the Battle Star, the Iron Fortress, Confederate, Clear Skies, and a High Caliber. And honestly, he deserves it. The only thing that he was robbed of was a 5th kill. That Kagero, had he gotten that Kagero earlier on, he would have had the Kraken as well, living up to his name. But honestly, if you have to carry a team this hard in a carrier, you definitely rule this game. Well done. 1,800 points. My goodness. That game. Thank you for sending that one in. That was one of the best and most hilarious Golden Channel games that I've seen, and I have seen a lot of stupid on the Golden Channel, but that takes the cake. Had that Bismarck survived, had he not damage conned the 2 fires, maybe, or had he just run away, he would have won this one. And he got brawled to death by a Shokaku in the cup circle. Thank you, Kraken, for sending that one in. I'll see you all next week. I'm going to need a break.